Hey guys, how you doing? It's Coach Alan here with Coach Dalton. So today we are going to do a Coaches Talk video. We're gonna be answering some Q&As from our Instagram story last week. There's some really good questions on there, and also we are going to bust some fitness myths. All right, so it should be a fun one. To start it off, let's get straight into it. So Dalton, protein requirements, protein amounts. Some people say that you can only have 30 grams of protein a meal. Is that true?
Yeah, not at all. But you see it kind of thrown around everywhere. And in fact, because of this misunderstanding from an old study that came out, most of the supplement industry has actually tailored their serving size around between 25 and 30 grams based on this sole idea that after that amount, you're not getting any benefit. So for those who aren't aware, when you consume some protein, we get an increase in muscle protein synthesis or a potential slowdown, not a lot, but a slowdown of muscle protein breakdown. So the goal by consuming a lot of protein is to spike these across the day. Now, just doing that without weight training doesn't increase muscle mass, but it does get with the appropriate amount of leucine that comes in from the protein, you get these spikes of muscle protein synthesis. So it's between 2.4 and 3.2 grams of leucine seems to be where it taps out that muscle protein synthesis. Now, that lasts anywhere depending on your training age, it can go from 2 to 4 hours per bout. And we're giving these massive ranges because it's like this, it's like a dial on your light switch. It goes up and down in intensity. It doesn't really turn on and off. It just increases and decreases. And you look at your day kind of in these phases of how many times can I stimulate muscle protein synthesis. Now, this old study that came out led people to believe that after about 30 grams, there was no more increase in muscle protein synthesis between 25 and 30 grams. And these were, they used whey protein. Whey proteins are really bioavailable, fast-acting protein source for people, and on an empty stomach it gets a really high peak really quickly and essentially taps out your muscle protein synthesis for a period of time. Now with mixed meals it's a little bit slower and a little bit lower. You don't get the same peaks going on, but in these studies they showed that tapping out at about 30 grams meant that we're not going to make these supplements have any more than 30 grams of protein at a time because people won't use it. That's not technically true. Your body does heaps of other things with protein. It just doesn't do muscle protein synthesis anymore. Yeah. Now, we've got some new updated studies which show with a greater range of the body being trained, and these are now total body training sessions as opposed to single joint or single limb, before they were doing like leg extensions till failure, now they're training a full body to failure. And we actually see closer to 30 to 40 grams being a little bit more effective depending on or with increased amounts of muscle sites being activated. So these reportings though that come out are actually just averages. If you're a smaller person or a larger person than the average means that are reported for these, you're likely going to have a greater or a reduced amount of protein that you need to consume. So it's better to be done and understood per lean pound of body mass, not actually with an random amount of protein. So having this idea that you can only consume 30 grams and you have to do that multiple times throughout the day, regardless of your body height, size, training age, sex, all those things, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So when we talk about maximum amount of protein, you kind of want to tap it out after, like, if you're really going to break it down and look into it, after that 3 grams of leucine is where you kind of want to go, yep, cool, I've got the best benefits after that. But depending on the protein source, you could be looking at 60 grams of like protein to get 3 grams of leucine, or you could be looking at 25 grams of whey.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a really, really good point there. It's that when you obviously mix in meals, it's going to slow things down, right? And a lot of times, and also another thing is a lot of these studies done, I think people tend to forget that they are done on obviously a lot of the general populations, not necessarily people with abnormal amount of lean muscle mass. Yeah. And so which does change the numbers when you have someone that is let's say 100 kilo 3% body fat with heaps of muscle mass. Yep. You will require higher amount of protein intake to maintain those, and then when you spread your meals out, you probably end up having more than 3 grams of leucine meal. And I think it's really important for people to understand that that's that applies to most of the research, right? Like, a lot of the research done, even like obviously there's more and more research coming out that may be starting more towards like, physique athletes. Like obviously there are some people in the industry doing some great work on that. But other than that, most of the studies still apply to like, in, medical field and things like that with general population that, have a different needs, especially when it comes to nutrition training. So what we can do is look at those studies and I just break it down and then I look at it, objectively, and then see how it can be applied and how does that fit into your scenario and what are you trying to achieve. And so that is
at uni where you get to see what most of the participants look like. Funnily enough, most of them are college kids, that are like university kids that are there who are just luckily enough to be partaking in the class that the professor's running a study on. And so, like, having been there and seen behind the scenes of them, when you read a criteria that says these were trained individuals, potentially trained like 3 to 5 times a week recreationally over the last 2 or 3 years, and you look at them, like for me, what that describes a very different person to what we consider trained individuals who train like that.
Exactly.
At Flex Success, that's an intermediate to an advanced athlete. That's a good athlete in our eyes. But when you actually look at the quality of the people that are there, that would really be closer to like a novice, even if not still a newbie who's going through their gains and stuff and just walked into the gym and applied themselves half-heartedly and just continually going back and forth. Not appropriate training intensities, progressive overload, 3 to 5 times a week of rigorous resistance training. They kind of go in and just do the normal person's workouts. So totally different. They sound the same, but when you look at who it is behind the scenes, when you actually get to see this, it totally changes your view on how this actually played out. Exactly.
And I think with that, I think it's a perfect timing to shameless plug that is why we have the research review available to you guys, so that way we can break those things down for you. Coach Dalton and Coach Shannon are doing fantastic work on breaking down all the research available that's in regards to all things nutrition and training, so that way you can have a look at those and then see how you can apply and utilize those knowledge. And then I was just recently doing a Instagram post on one of the protein studies, and I think that goes well with this particular topic, in that I think for majority of us, like obviously we have a job and we don't really have time to worry too much about the little things, and that is also why you hire a coach. But I think if you just stick to the basic, working out the protein amounts that you need based on your goal and obviously your lean muscle mass and what you're trying to achieve, and then just break it down to 4 to 5 meals a day, spread it out, or even whatever that suits your lifestyle, and then just make sure you have a high quality protein source every few hours. Then you pretty much have all the basics covered, so you don't need to worry too much about it.
You're going to tick all the boxes to become one of the most jacked people around, because most people don't care about optimal distribution of protein or hitting their total protein targets across the day. So that's it.
We're just hitting the basics and you'll be fine. All right, so the next question is how many calories that you actually burn during weight training. So a lot of people think, the harder I train, and the more I push, then I'm going to burn more calories doing weight training. And then a lot of times people tend to use that to try to justify why they need to eat more food. But I think people often forget that you don't actually burn many calories while you are weight training. If you just simply think about, let's say upper body session takes you like an hour to 90 minutes or whatever, the amount of time that you actually spend lifting is probably not even 30 minutes or up. So you're really not factoring like the time that you spend texting and checking out Instagram and all that sort of stuff. You probably don't burn as many calories as you think. So you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So we used to have this idea that when you're going in to do your training and you come out feeling wrecked and stuff, that your perception of how tired you are actually related to how much energy you expended. And it's not that idea held true for a while, and it seems to just trickle through and kind of just still grabs on at the edge of general population. We know that's not necessarily the case. There's some new stuff that's actually come out recently to show it can be maxed out at like 10 calories per pound, 10 calories per minute that you're getting across like expenditure for training. That's maximum training for full large compound movements and stuff like that. But it's not sustainable to do that for 30, 60, 90 minutes. You'll have a level of application for your training, and that will last potentially 45 seconds to a minute. Then you'll have a couple of minutes of rest. So you get this increase up, down expenditure that's actually going on. So because of that, you're actually probably burning anywhere between 3 and 10 calories per minute of what's actually going on. Rest is kind of at that 1 calorie or just under 1 calorie per minute. So it's not that much when you average it out over the course of your training session. Now, if you look at, like even if we gave that at 30 minutes of intense training at, you got 90 calories, 3 calories a minute there's 90 calories. Potentially at 10 calories, you're getting 300. So now, all of a sudden, 300 calories max. If you did this awesome session, that's like half a Big Mac. I think a Big Mac's like 600 something calories. Yeah. That's nothing. It's abysmal. It's so small. 300 calories is like maybe I think 250 grams. So or something like that. It's not a lot of food that you get to have out of that. Doing that consistently, sure, you do ramp up some of these recovery processes, which do kind of have residual cost of energy that you got to burn over the course of the day, repairing muscle protein, repairing some tissue sites, tendon repair, synthesizing glycogen, all the fun stuff that happens between exercise bouts. That's going to cost some energy for sure, but it's nowhere near as much. Even worse is this afterburn effect that people keep talking about, especially around like high intensity interval training, is there's this component that happens afterwards where you get to have this oxygen debt that's owed and your body catches up and you get this afterburn of all these extra calories. At maximum, these studies show that it's 10%. So if you burn 40 calories doing a HIIT sprint, well, wow, you got an extra 4 calories in recovery, which is over hours of your day. You really would never notice it. And 4 calories is about like half a grape. So great work. So it's never as much as you actually think it is, even though you feel it. Your perception is really high. You're tired, lactic acid buildup, low local glucose or glycogen stores are depleted. So you feel down, your central nervous system will probably be a bit fried from the hard training. You're constantly going to feel wrecked, but it doesn't actually equal a high output like we think it does. We feel that we deserve a lot more out of our training than we actually get, but unfortunately it's not the case. Unless you're a big boy and you can train for a couple of hours, that doesn't add up to being a monster amount of calories.
And that's why, you see a lot of people, I guess it's a little bit more specific to bodybuilders coming into a competition where they have this mindset of, okay, I'll start with double sessions, I'll do multiple sets and do more volume of work, or using a lighter load and things like that, so I can burn more. But in reality, you don't really burn that much more. And if you think back to and this is a very, very important point, and one point that we're really trying to get across to, I guess, everyone is you really need to look at what are you trying to achieve with weight training? We're doing weight training not to burn calories. Obviously, it is an indirect effect of exercising, but we're doing weight training to obviously build lean tissue or maintain lean tissue, and also other benefits like your bone density and things like that. But obviously more specifically for physique athletes, so that way you can maintain lean muscle mass, improve your body composition, but you don't use weight training to burn calories. You obviously you create a energy deficit through your calorie intake, your activity level throughout the day, and perhaps some additional cardiovascular training if required. And even with cardio, a lot of typical bodybuilders just look at cardio is the means to burn calories, whereas it has so many other benefits, right? You can elicit a different adaptation, improve your heart health, improve your overall fitness. Can actually be a very, very good tool that you can use, say in the off season. You can improve your overall conditioning. You can then recover better. You can then actually do more quality volume of work, which will actually then allow you to create more growth. Whereas more, I guess the typical mindset is, coming into the bodybuilding competition, you do more weight training, do more reps, and then do more cardio. So what it's actually happening is that then you're just going to put yourself at risk of, because your intensity level is going to go down. And then obviously you're doing all this extra cardio work, your legs or whatever is going to be more fatigued. Then again, it's going to impact your performance, which means you probably have less, your chance of maintaining lean muscle mass would be a lot lower, which is not ideal when it comes to, a bodybuilding competition or, or physique athlete.
You're losing food as well throughout a whole prep, right? So even having the capacity, even just to eat enough food to recover from those increased training sessions. In a prep, unfortunately, we have to take that food away. So you're not even replacing the fuel to recover from those, let alone perform those increased training intensities or additional training loads to a good degree continually throughout the whole prep. So it's just backwards.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess the point of this topic is that, making sure you all these things like weight training, cardio, food, manipulating food, calorie intake and macronutrients, all this sort of stuff, they are all, I guess, tools that we can use in our toolbox to help you achieve a specific body composition goals. But you just have to understand, why you are doing what you're doing, and obviously measure the outcome and make assessments, and don't just do things because the other pros in the gyms, that's what they're doing. So yeah. Right. So the next one is BMI. So this is a very good topic, and I think we'll be able to have a good conversation around this. So BMI, is it a good measure for health? Because obviously, the typical, I guess, the perception around the fitness industry is that, because it doesn't factor in how much lean body mass you have and your body composition. So a lot of people think that, some people can be like 120 kilo jack, but be classified as obese. I'm pretty sure you and I both, if we work out the numbers, we're probably close to the obese, right? But obviously we're nowhere near that. I think that obviously we have a similar stance, and obviously I actually got that from you as well when you spoke about this ages ago. It's actually a very good measurement for majority of the population, and it's one important thing to remember that bodybuilders or people with abnormal amount of muscle, it's only a very, very, very small percentage of the total population. Tiny. So not everything is tailored for
1%.
Tiny.
Tiny.
Yeah, exactly right. So if you want to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so when you think about BMI, it's a tool that we use. It's a way to take your height and your weight and get a ratio of someone's body mass, essentially. Yeah. They do this to scale it across the population so that we can look at people as a whole and determine whether or not there are health risks that clutter around these particular ratios. And lo and behold, these studies have been done observationally for ages now, where we can correlate between a higher BMIs and more metabolic risks, more health disease risks, increased costs go up for nearly everything, every life factor. And so alongside of that, you get all the negative outcomes that come from that. So unfortunately, type 2 diabetes and obesity. With that, it was developed and implemented as a tool to be able to capture that. Now, when you take someone who's quite active and fit and you do the same thing to them, they're going to have an increased body mass for sure. But moving that your body mass away from what we call homeostasis, or where your body kind of likes to sit naturally, where your body wants to sit, if you increase that body mass from there, the more you take it away from where you started off from, the more you're increasing some of the risks and adverse effects that happen from that. Even if it's done through a healthy, sustained, non-drug approach to increasing your body composition over your lifetime, that shuttle away, the further you go from that starting point, the more risks that you put on. You're creating a larger body, so the organs have to become bigger to sustain that, which is a little bit more of a stress on the body. Now, it's not to say that it's unhealthy to get bigger and aim for more body composition, because that's not what I'm saying. But you have to recognize that going away from that set point, that starting point, you're going to increase the stress and demands from the body. Now, you can do this healthily and sustain it quite happily for a long period of time, and even those that take themselves quite high to their genetic potential and do it in a healthy manner by reducing down their body fat at the same time and increasing that, they're still going to have some of the unfortunate health risks that go along from that. Large insulin excursions and stuff like that. You could glucose excursions. You can have some unhealthy risks come out of that. Cardiovascular stress and strain from being a higher load, especially without cardiovascular training or function being implemented throughout your training and stuff. So the takeaway is that the further you get higher away from your starting point, the more stress and strain. And this is relevant in most of the animal kingdom, or all throughout the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what size of an animal that you pick, the outliers of that, whether they be very small or very large, don't survive. And there's a reason why the genes that are passed on are those that kind of couple within the middle. The heavier animals obviously take more food to be able to sustain them, and then they can be preyed upon. Even if you go up to the top of the food chain, being like, if you don't have predators, being heavier away from the standard norm is not going to make it easier for you to travel around and whatnot. So you have higher exposure of lifestyle factors and environmental factors. So you've got all of that going on. Same true for us as humans.
Yeah, and I guess a very good point there, right? You know, you may be 3% body fat, but by being heavier, there is still a lot of stress on the body, right? And then I think one really, really important point is that I think, you know, we tend to see a lot is that bodybuilders or a lot of people in the fitness industry, because obviously having a, you know, I guess, exceptional amount of, you know, exceptional physique, you know, obviously better than the general populations, but it doesn't mean that your body works any different, or your physiology or your biology works different than any other human being, right? Because your body doesn't really care to carry 100 plus kgs of lean muscle mass. If anything, it's a very energy costing, and like you said, from a survival standpoint, it's actually not ideal. You know, we want to actually hold on, you know, not be too lean. We want to hold on to a certain amount of body fat. That also explains why it gets harder and harder as you're trying to get leaner and leaner and leaner, because it's not good for survival, right? You want to hold on to those spare energy. And same goes, you know, carrying abnormal amount of lean body mass. Whilst it looks cool, you know, it looks extreme, but it's definitely not ideal. And it's also why, going back to like that point of like, you know, BMI and stuff, it's like, you know, we're looking at like the middle of the bell curve, and that applies for, you know, when you actually look at that, applies for people. If you use the model to apply for people who doesn't necessarily weight train, just go around and go about a business, whatever, that actually is a quite pretty good indicator. Because that means that for them to maintain a certain amount of body weight, it will require them to do some exercise and then monitor their food intake and things like that for them to maintain that, which means, you know, they'll generally be a little bit healthier, as opposed to, you know, if someone that doesn't really do much weight training and then, you know, have like, you know, BMI of like 40 or 50, that will usually means that they will be like actually be obese, you know, unless they weight train and be jacked. So, so yeah.
Even then, we've got to remember that this tool that was developed, and the use of this tool, it applies to 99.9999% of the population.
Yeah.
A large of the kickback is that if it doesn't apply to these physique athletes or bodybuilders, they're like, it doesn't work, it's a shitty tool. We use the tool because it applies to nearly everyone, and the tiny people that it doesn't apply to, we take that extra stuff into consideration. But visually, you would see the difference of someone who was jacked and someone who was outside of that, the BMI, a high BMI. We'd be able to see that there is different health profiles going on. While some of the stresses might still be there, it would be totally visually different. So it's a great tool to use that encompasses most people in nearly every situation, and it's a way to just give a ratio of the body mass that you've got.
Yeah, 100%. All right, now let's jump into some listeners' questions. So we actually got some really good questions from last week, and then I actually want to encourage you guys, whoever's watching this video, if you have any questions, hit us up on all social platforms, or even comment on this YouTube video below. I will always try and answer those questions and get back to you, or email us if you want to, you know, learn a little bit more, or perhaps get some coaching. Send us the inquiry, and then we can get it started. All right. Awesome. I'm very good at this marketing thing, man. Just doing all that. All right. So first question from Isaac System 96. What is the minimum protein requirement for a bodybuilder? Do you want to take it for?
Yeah, man. So this is a cool one. For a bodybuilder, the kind of recognized position stand from the
Mm.
International Sports Society on nutrition is 1.4 to 2 grams per kilogram of lean body mass. So
Mm-hmm.
within that range, you're going to find an appropriate amount of protein for your body to retain or increase the amount of muscle mass that you've got on you. So right around in that range. Now, an easy rule of thumb that you might see traveling around the internet is 1 gram per pound. It's super
Yeah.
simple. Figure that out. 2.2 grams per kilo. That works out to be. So if
Mm.
you do that, you'll nail the requirements. But the minimal requirement, yeah, we're technically talking 1.4 grams per kilo, which is a tiny amount of protein when you actually think about it.
Yeah, and I think as long as you stick to like the within that range, like what I normally recommend for most people that don't need to worry about it too much, I say just anywhere from 2 to 3 grams, per kilo body weight. If you are on on carrying more body fat, you can probably go on the low end, or if you're dieting, you can probably go on the high end. When you come down and we get leaner and stuff, and so that way then you just keep things simple, and it covers basis for most people that you don't have to worry too much about it.
Exactly. I don't know why you would want to know the minimum amount and kind of flirt with the slowest gains possible, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like, having a little bit more extra protein, and then sometimes I feel like, especially when you have a, decent amount of calorie intake or demand for some people, that, sometimes having a little bit more protein may not necessarily be a bad thing, because then if you look at the meals that you're consuming, because a lot of times, a lot of the food sources that you're consuming in high amounts will, like, carbohydrate or fat sources typically come with some protein already. So if you go for like the very, very minimum amount, then that means that you're probably only going to eat like a tiny piece of meat with, like, let's say, like a,
I guess it might apply for vegan vegetarians who struggle to get in their protein, but mixed sources of like veggies, you'll find that protein amount kind of gets pretty close to that. And as long as it's not coming from a single source, it's going to be pretty adequate.
Yeah. All right. So the second question is by Tommy Chemble. Calculating new maintenance calories during the deeper end of a contest prep diet. Right. So
this is your.
Yeah, I'll answer this, and then you can obviously give your thoughts on that as well. So the way I go about it is, I don't think you need to calculate it any different than you would, let's say, at the start of the prep. Obviously, you're going by your body weight, lean body mass, activity level, age, sex, and all the rest of it. I think the only difference that you potentially may need to consider is the fact that, obviously now you're lighter now, but also you have to look at, like, what your NEAT or your non-exercise activity level is like, because that seems to be the one that can vary a lot for people going through that contest prep and getting leaner and leaner and leaner. Whereas everything else, if you look at your, resting metabolic rate, your thermal effect of food, or even your physical activity level, all those things probably won't vary too much. Potentially, like your, if fatting is a metabolic adaptation and stuff, might be slightly lower, but it's definitely not as much as people think. So the biggest variables will probably be your NEAT, but if you monitor that, then you can pretty much just calculate it like you would at the start of the prep. So no different than how you don't need to calculate it any different than how you would normally. That's my opinion.
Yeah. So I kind of use when I start someone out, I use a calorie per pound ratio or calorie per kilo ratio and figure out how much they're eating at, to watch what happens with their maintenance. And that ratio, at the end of a prep, will apply it back to them and see what their body does. Now, if their needs has increased or decreased and whatnot, and if we're trying to stabilize things, I'll try and regulate that and keep them capped at a certain amount. And once their weight start going up on that amount, and I can ensure that misreporting or hidden food consumption stuff's not going on at the back, then we can potentially up or down adjusted depending on what they're displaying or showing. So that is an easy way to do it, but we track the data the whole way through. So when we talk about doing this, we're already doing it from a place of good information. If you're doing it yourself and you haven't been tracking or keeping aware of these things, it just really makes, it's like pissing in the wind. You're really focusing on something that doesn't matter as much when you could have been doing a whole bunch of small things that would just make this whole job easier. So you're, when you do this, whatever that ratio is at the start, at the end, it could be 15 calories per pound. That's a really easy maintenance number for most people, 30 to 32, 33 calories per kilo. You're going to find that most people will sit in there. Smaller females, smaller guys may be under that, bigger guys may be above that. And sometimes you find just animals who are small, but they burn a massive amount of calories and they just get to eat all the food and stuff all the time. They're super efficient. Their NEAT levels must be through the roof. I bet they fidget a lot when they sleep or something like that.
Yeah.
Just, you find some people that are really cool like that, and some people who don't have any, no movement at all. They are like, I sit and fidget at the moment. If you could see my feet, I'd be tapping and rocking the whole thing off. And I'm lucky that I have a high NEAT output in some of those characteristics, and other people, I've got clients that don't, that sit there and don't move at all. And having a low amount of daily activity and or subconscious NEAT activity, it means that we're just going to have to increase that, or their food's going to always be on that lower end.
Yeah. So the key takeaways don't need to be any different to calculate it. Main thing is just to measure as many variables as possible so that we can make calculated decision moving forward. And I think one thing I think a lot of people, and this is, I guess, from our experience with our clients, is what we see is that because we're tracking all this data and stuff, we know when you are at a certain calorie intake, so say calorie per kilo, we know your body should be doing certain things. So a lot of times when things don't happen like it should, not saying always the case, but most of the times due to adherence, whether it's conscious or unconscious, especially for conscious prep. So that's a key factor to consider for most people, making sure everything's on point. It could be from your tracking and stuff. And then typically we see a lot of people coming to the contest prep because they're craving flavors and stuff. We started using a lot of sugar-free products or things trying to maximize the food volume or taste and stuff. And all those things could accumulate to actually makes a difference, which then can skew the readings and stuff. So then you need to factor those things as well. But otherwise, like the bigger things like your calorie intake and all the rest of it, like, because you're never gonna get the exact numbers anyway, but you should really get a pretty good idea of like whether you are in the energy deficit or not, provided everything's met.
Yeah.
So, yep. Now, next one, we have the Willow Show, I think that's his name. I apologize if I pronounce it wrong. Is the bike good for leg details during prep? So I assume he's asking whether doing stationary bike will help bring out the details of your legs. I'll let you take that and I'll follow up.
This is a fun one because observationally we would see a lot of people see cyclists with really good legs, lean legs and stuff like that. We see people who tend to like potentially runners and stuff like that, have very defined legs. It's actually more so due to body fat. Yeah, so we have to just lose body fat. And unfortunately, and I've done a really cool video on this on another YouTube video, which we can link to, where the body has a preferential fat allotment, or it pulls fat from areas that it wants to move them to. And it depends on what type of fat cell receptor and stuff that you've got, the amount of adrenaline and stuff that's being pumped out. And your body will essentially pull, but the easiest way to understand it is it kind of pulls from the extremes first. So your extremities will have, not extremes, your extremities will have their first lot of fat use being taken from. So fingers, fat pads in the hands, fat pads in the feet, small amounts. Then it starts to come up from the lower limbs, and then you'll see people's arms and delts and stuff coming through a lot faster than abdominals, lower back, thigh, glutes area for females and stuff. So you'll see it kind of come towards the core. Now the actual tidbit for that initially is if you have someone with a large amount of visceral fat, they'll actually lose from that first initially until it slows down, and then the body will start taking from these extremities. So you might not see much changing visually going on initially from a diet, but your weight's going down. It'll come from around your core, like organs and stuff like that. And then it kind of shifts away and gets pulled from subcutaneous areas. So as we get from there, one of the areas to start seeing some definition really come in is like the VMO. Everyone starts to see that taper up first. Unfortunately, it has nothing to do with the bike. Some people might be using it as a way of burning calories or increasing their cardiovascular function, and just see that, oh, I'm getting leaner, I'm doing the bike, so this has helped me get my legs in a lot more striations, or I've lost a lot more body fat from there. Locally, we know the amount of fat sources that you use at a cellular level to be very small from an area that it has been exercised, and whilst it can be a little bit higher than what's been taken away from a distal muscle group, it eventually stabilizes and balances out across the body. So you can see that, yes, locally there might be increase in fat usage, but it'll be evened out across the day. And people are just misattributing something that's going on, which is that diet, the calorie deficit, which is driving the changes in body composition. And one of the ways of them getting this change in body composition and expending those calories is through using the bike. So that is what I really think is going on.
Yeah, 100%. And then I think from what we understand now, anyway, unless I'm not aware of, I think still no such thing as a spot reduction. Like, you may be able to potentially drive a little bit more blood flow. Like, there are some, like, for example, Lau McDonald's stubborn fat protocol, using like driving more blood flow into the stubborn area to try and break down the fat around those stubborn areas. Like for myself, would be my glutes and stuff, usually the last coming. But at the end of the day, in order to get to that stage, what's required of you to do that is still the energy deficit, sticking to the fixing, just losing body fat over time. You can use those modalities to potentially accelerate a little bit or towards the end where you really need to pull that last bit off. I don't think so. And also another thing to consider is that, some people will take that literally to the next level. Of course, and that's why we see a lot of girls or guys even do Stairmasters, which I actually don't think it's a good.
It's a hard.
It's a good because you have to think about it. Yeah, sure. Like, you could potentially drive more blood flow, and you think bike's doing you good. But what happens then is, if you're doing bike sessions every day, you are actually fatiguing your legs, which then means if that have started to have an impact on your performance, you will risk losing lean muscle mass on your legs, which then probably makes it even harder for you to get more details out if you're losing mass and size at the same time as you losing body fat. So so that's another thing to consider as well. So I guess that's kind of linked with the first fitness myth that we answered, that obviously look at all these different training strategies and modalities as tools that you can have, and apply then that suit your lifestyle, your preference, and what's going to allow you to create the greatest amount of overall progress, and then stick to that. So it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. So All right, so the next question is by Jojo A62012. Will you get the same muscle growth training to a 8 to 9 RPE with pulse/tempo sets versus max weight?
Cool. So with this one, instead of delving into all the science and answering this question, we've actually got a research review that's come out that will be coming out on the one that I've done myself around the components around muscle hypertrophy and what's required to be growing muscle tissue for that. So if you want to find out more, jump onto that. Shannon and I have also done some other reviews around hypertrophy as well, so you can check out what we've done previously as well. So jump over across to the Flex Success website, go into the research review component and download those and have a listen there.
Yeah, there you go. So, and that's, again, try to do a shameless plug that we have all these awesome resources available. So you guys should really take advantage of it, and it's going to allow you to, if nothing, gain as much knowledge as possible. And then one day you may be able to apply this thing. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're constantly learning, and we're constantly providing more information. So I think we've gone for pretty much in an hour. So yeah, we won't take out too much of your time, guys. So that's the 3 fitness myths, and also a few Q&A as well. And again, if you guys have any questions, you can ask us through social media. So different coaches will take up different Instagram stories every day. And, we always put out like question box and stuff there. So, and then we'll try to do an in-depth answer through our YouTube channel as well. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed that. Coach Dalton and myself and the team at FlexBet really appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe to our channel and make sure to follow us on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and all that. I don't think we tweet, that's not what we do, but you can find us on Instagram and Facebook, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, guys. Cool.